What is up, everyone? Welcome to my Qatar Grand Prix final thoughts episode on Saturday morning, November 30th. It's around 7:37 Germany time right now. There are no sims out of F1 Fantasy Tools as of this recording, but we do have some data from Formula One. So over the next 10-15 minutes, I'm just going to go over my final thoughts for the Qatar Grand Prix preview, what like chip strategy, what 3x 2x kind of guys we are going to go over. But we did have we had a practice session and a sprint qualifying session yesterday. Practice one was actually pretty surprising. If we can scroll down here a little bit, Ferrari looking really strong. Charles Leclerc coming out on top, Norris, Piastri 2-3 with signs, Tsunoda, Bottas, Stroll, Russell, Albon running up the top 9 here. Verstappen was struggling, Hamilton top 10 as well. Alonso, Hulkenberg, Lawson, Gasly, Magnussen, Zhou Guanyu, Sergio Perez, Colapinto, and Esteban Ocon rounded up the top 10. We moved on to sprint qualifying later in the day where it was a little bit cooler on the track. Norris splitting the two McLarens was a little surprising, but Ferrari did seem to take a step back there. Carlos Sainz in fourth, Charles Leclerc in fifth, Max Verstappen dropping down to sixth. So in my video yesterday, I was saying that Max Verstappen is a pretty nice differential in my head, and it does not seem like it's going to pan out there. So I'm a little bit off of Red Bull, a little bit off back Max Verstappen compared to 24 hours ago. So taking a little bit of a step back there. Lewis Hamilton, just qualifying woes continue, but George Russell seems on it, and he has entered my thoughts. Pierre Gasly, Nico Hulkenberg, Liam Lawson round out the top 10 there. Really interesting battle for P6 in the Constructors' Championship. Alonso, Albon, Bottas, Stroll, Magnussen, Perez, Tsunoda, Ocon, Zhou Guanyu, and Franco Colapinto. During FP1 yesterday, it was mentioned that Franco Colapinto is now running an old spec of the Williams car just because of how much damage they've incurred over the last few races. So that is a little discouraging from him. But starting on the back means that he can probably only go up. It was also noted, I think I saw F1 Fantasy Rob or Hub and Pop Hamman, one of the two, said that the Williams only have one spare nose this weekend, so that could be a problem as well. So Albon in the midfield battling out Franco Colapinto at the back, just kind of trundling around back there with the Saubers. Yeah, it could be a tough decision here, but yeah, George Russell is going to kind of enter my thoughts after his impressive qualifying. He was saying that he may have actually been able to take pole, just had a little bit of a technical issue coming out of one of the corners in qualifying, but did concede that the McLarens look absolutely rapid. So what do we have in terms of data here? We have the F1.com simulation. So we've got the sprint qualifying analysis here: McLaren, Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull, 1, 2, 3, 4, Alpine, best of the rest, Haas, RB, Aston Martin, Sauber, and Williams all the way down there in last. But if we go over to their simulations for qualifying, which is going to be later today after the sprint, but lineup lock is at 9 a.m. Eastern US time, 2 p.m. UK time, 5 p.m. local time. So do not forget that later today. Qualifying simulation pace has McLaren pretty far out in front of McLaren or Ferrari, 0.21 seconds there. Then Mercedes and Red Bull. Alpine, once again, best of the rest. Haas, RB, Aston Martin, Williams, and Sauber all the way at the back, despite Valtteri Bottas getting into SQ2. Pretty impressive from the Finnish driver this weekend. He's so cheap that I don't see a reason to get him out of my F1 fantasy squad. The positions lost in the sprint might hurt, but it's just one of those necessary evils, unfortunately. Avoiding the DNF is key. I think Bottas can get that done. So McLaren's still looking strong for pole later today as well. And if we kind of keep scrolling down here, race simulation pace, Ferrari actually coming out ahead of McLaren by 0.02 seconds. Then Red Bull a little bit more off the pace. Then Mercedes, Alpine, Haas, Williams, Aston Martin, RB, and Sauber all the way at the back. This data is a little discouraging because I kind of fancied Yuki Tsunoda. He looked pretty good in FP1. He was in the top 10 that I showed you earlier. And he's in that price range where I can get to him in F1 Fantasy. If I decide to not go with the triple back marker strategy, if I decide to not go triple McLaren, and maybe shake it up a little bit. So let's just get to that part of the episode here. So here is my T1 squad as it was constructed for the Las Vegas Grand Prix. Currently got triple Ferrari with McLaren, Frank Colapinto, Valtteri Bottas, and Nico Hulkenberg. Hulkenberg at 12 million, he's a nice luxury to have, but considering we've got all these other options that are kind of around him that are also cheaper, like Yuki Tsunoda, 11.4, Liam Lawson, 11, Pierre Gasly, 10.8. It with how close the margins are right now, it might be nice to kind of get Nico out, even though I think he will do well this weekend. Haas looked pretty good. Kevin Magnussen saying that he only went out early because he ran into a little bit of traffic. I think he actually kind of ran into his teammate a little bit. Didn't say it was Nico's fault at all, though. Just kind of saying that it was bad timing on their end. So Kevin Magnussen also kind of a luxurious pick there at 13.3 million. However, if you get Nico Hulkenberg out of here, and Charles Leclerc, I've got 3 free transfers with this T1 squad. So the problem is going Lando and Oscar locks me in to one of these back markers here in Alexander Albon or Zhou Guanyu. Albon said that the Williams long run pace was good. And if we go back to the Friday debrief over here, we can see that he's not far off of that analysis. They're better than Aston Martin, RB, and Sauber. So can Alexander Albon's bad run of form continue with how many DNFs he has had? If we go back once again to his page, we can see that just a stream of negative points for Albon right now. Surely this run has to end sooner rather than later. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 DNFs in the last 5 races. Kind of a nice differential. Don't know if I believe in Zhou Guanyu this weekend. Again, I was off of him last weekend in Vegas, and it turned out to be pretty good with Nico Hulkenberg. But yeah, locking in one of these two as the back markers is not ideal. I think Lando is the clear standout choice for your DRS boost. If you're playing a chip, if you're on Limitless, whatever, I think Lando is a must-have this weekend. Don't have to get too clever here. But the Oscar Piastri, I mentioned it in my race review for the Las Vegas Grand Prix, the dip from down under, just a little bit off the pace. He seemed to indicate that he does like this track in the post-race or post-qualifying interview last night. But he has just taken a little bit of a step back over the last few races, and he's a little bit kind of trending down where George Russell is trending up. He seems to be getting the most out of Mercedes. Where is he? There he is. And if I bring in Russell, 12.4 million leaves me with enough money to get Nico Hulkenberg or kind of maneuver anywhere around here to get Yuki Tsunoda, who's going to start the back, but he seemed to kind of, I don't want to say blame the team, but he said it was just bad planning for their SQ1 exit. So I think he thinks they have a pretty rapid car this weekend, even though the data doesn't really back that up. And starting from the back could be in line for some overtakes here during the sprint, which is kind of where you want to make your money as a back marker because it's just so overpowering. If you avoid a DNF and you go up 4 places and you get 4 overtakes, you are pretty much as good as the race winner in the sprint. So Yuki Tsunoda's in my thoughts there. Liam Lawson, I prefer Tsunoda over Lawson. I prefer Gasly over Ocon. I think I prefer Hulkenberg over Magnussen as well. Those would kind of be my orders for the back marker teams there. Also still, I guess I'd go Joe over Bottas at this moment in time. And I kind of fancy Albon over the course of the weekend, but Colapinto starting from the back just has to kind of make up a couple of spots and we'll have a pretty good start to the weekend. But a Lando George combo here does give me enough money to get whoever I want out of the back markers besides Ocon and Magnussen because I have no interest in Lance Stroll. But there's also the kind of thing where I could just keep Charles Leclerc in here, but maybe get rid of Ferrari, go with a stronger driver, and then drop down to Mercedes. It's not enough savings to really change any of my outlooks with the back markers, I'd still be looking at Alexander Albon or Joe Guan Yu here. So that's kind of where I'm at. If I go Lando Russell, I can get a better midfield marker. If I go Lando Oscar, I'm pretty sure Oscar is actually cheaper than Charles Leclerc right now, 25.9 versus 25.6, but still doesn't really change anything for me there either. So yeah, it could be Mercedes, Ferrari. It's really between Mercedes versus Ferrari for the constructor, and then Piastri versus Russell for that second spot. But if this doesn't really apply to you, if you're on a 3x boost, there is absolutely nothing wrong with going Lando and Piastri. I expect McLaren to probably be the strongest team over the course of the weekend. Piastri starting P3 in the sprint isn't awful. We'll see. Mercedes can be consistently inconsistent. Russell is flying high. He does have an older power unit. They mentioned that in FP1 on F1 TV yesterday. So that could be something that hampers him during the race instead of just like a one lap kind of single lap pace for the Mercedes. And the sprint will be earlier in the day as well, whereas the sprint qualifying was a little later in the day, so it was cooler. But the Grand Prix and the qualifying will also be at that time. So that's something we need to think about as well. While I'm on here, I'm just going to take one last quick look at F1 Fantasy Tools, make sure there's no updates here. So nothing as of right now, but I will tweet those out whenever the simulations go live. That will be before the sprint lock, which is in about 7 hours from right now. But yeah, extra DRS boost with Lando and Piastri is not bad at all. Ferrari, it's tough. They look good in FP1, but then Charles was pretty downbeat after sprint qualifying yesterday, saying maybe they returned to reality. After FP1, they were like, oh, where did this come from? But like I said in on my X account, which you can follow me at F1 Fantasy Ewan, it did seem like McLaren had the chance to grow into the weekend, and Lando did that with his P1, and Oscar came up with the P3. So kind of in summary, Lando is a lock. McLaren is a lock. The second premium driver for me is going to probably come down to Piastri versus Russell, with Leclerc with an outside shot, depending on what the sims kind of say. But I could be getting off of Ferrari entirely this weekend. Mercedes versus Ferrari is the battle for the second constructor. I think Ferrari may be more consistently there, like Carlos and Charles looking a little bit more consistent this weekend than Lewis, who had one of those downbeaten interviews as well yesterday. It's been like, I'm just slow. So with the Mercedes race pace not looking that good and Ferrari race pace looking a little bit stronger just based on the FP1 and sprint qualifying data that we had from F1.com, I will likely be going over to Ferrari. And that just kind of means it's going to be Albon versus Joe Guan Yu for me. If I drop down to a Lando Norris and a Oscar Piastri kind of lineup, then I can pick between Mercedes and Ferrari, whoever I want. I might stick with Ferrari there. And then I can have my pick of the back markers with Oscar Piastri or George Russell instead of Oscar Piastri. But if I was on a 3X, I think I'd stick with the McLaren. That's the differential that you need anyway. You don't have to be super different when you're using a chip, because having the chip is the differential. So those are kind of my final thoughts for Qatar. I think I've covered most of it. I'd probably stay away from Aston Martin. Still no interest there. Pierre Gasly is pretty interesting. He's having a really strong end to the season. I like I like both Haas's if you can afford them. I like Yuki over Lawson. I like Albon over Colapinto. Joe Guan Yu over Valtteri Bottas. I'm kind of off Red Bull. I'm iffy on Ferrari. I kind of like George Russell, but not Mercedes as a whole. Lando Norris is a lock. And that's kind of where I'm at before the sims come in, before we get any morning like quotes or anything, tidbits coming out of Qatar as of right now. But whenever those sims come out, I will post them all over the social medias that I am on, X, Blue Sky, TikTok, Instagram. I'll probably post them on the YouTube channel as well. But let me know in the comments below what your lineup decisions are. Hit me up on X at F1 Fantasy Ewan, and we can discuss that as we are, where are we at? 7 hours and 8 minutes away from our lineups locking for the second last race of the F1 and F1 fantasy season. But hit that like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, help us grow as we wind down our second season of YouTube content on F1 Fantasy Pole Position. But once again, thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and I will talk to you next time.